Welcome, LA Progressive friends, family, readers. Today, we're spending some time with Melina Abdullah. And Dr. Melina Abdullah really needs no introduction. Everybody in Southern California, really the country, knows about Dr. Melina Abdullah, but I'm going to ask Melina if she would just give us a little introduction. And what we're going to be talking about today is this year marks the 10th anniversary since she and some others got together to start Black Lives Matter LA. And in that 10 years, I wanted to talk to Melina about how her life has changed. So why don't you start off with just giving us a brief introduction and just go into the conversation, Melina.
Sure. Well, thanks so much for this conversation, Sharon. I really appreciate it. And I guess I'll just start. Well, I'm co-founder of Black Lives Matter Los Angeles and Black Lives Matter Grassroots. I'm a professor of Pan-African Studies at Cal State LA's College of Ethnic Studies. I'm a mama of 3 children, ages 20, 17, and 13. And I'm my mother's daughter, my grandmother's granddaughter, and try to live up to what that means to be the great, 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 great granddaughter of Rachel, who was the first woman in my family to be brought here as an enslaved person into Sabine Pass, Texas, and whose middle name, I carry her name as my middle name. Rachel is my middle name, and really try to honor that and try to move forward in a way that makes my mama proud. And I think I do so 55% of the time. So
I'm sure it's more than that.
So the majority of the time, except, my mother will always find the reason she's mad at me for eating donuts on Wednesdays at protests. So, those kinds of things I got to think about. Doesn't like that I cuss a little too much. So I try to work on it. So that's, I guess, who I am. I'm a person who likes to laugh a lot and finds purpose in life. And before we started recording, we were talking about Baba Kwasi Nkrumah, who passed just a day or so ago. And one of the things that I got from his life and that we were just talking about is the importance of living a purposeful life. And although his transition means I think we're all reeling from it, and it leaves a gaping hole in the world. It also reminds us that no matter how long you live, and he lived too short of a time, right? But no matter how long you live, it's important to live a life of purpose. And 69 years is too short of a time. I think about Mrs. Fannie Lou Hamer, who passed at 61, I believe, too short of a time. But living 61 years, or in her case, she stepped into her purpose in her 40s, late 40s. I think she was 47 when she came into movement, right? Even if it's 14 years of life on purpose, how much more impactful is that than even living a long life that is less purposeful? And so I think I'm intentionally living a life on purpose.
Absolutely. I was thinking about that. I've been thinking a lot about the tragedy of Gaza and the West Bank. And being the publisher of the LA Progressive, one of my missions was to provide information so that people could be more informed. Initially, it was so that they could be more informed as they take on their civic responsibilities, voting and writing to the editor and just being civically engaged. But as I'm watching this whole thing play out, it makes me so sad to know that, there are people who say, oh, I don't care about politics. I can't really, invest too much time in that. And I think that if we all would do even a quarter what Quasi did,
Mm.
this world would be a better place. Because the catastrophes that we see right now, they've escalated to the point that they are because the average person is not involved. And then the average person gets involved when things are like crazy. But all along, we could be shaping our governments. And so people like Quasi, people like you guys carry more weight than you would have if everybody did their fair share. So let's talk about these last 10 years, Melina.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly with everybody carrying a piece of the load, and a piece of the load can look very different, right? I don't know why I feel so emotional today, but I'm also thinking about another dear friend and comrade who passed too soon, who transitioned too soon, Rahul Deep. We called him Deep. He called himself Deep in these streets, right? Who was co-founder of the ally group for Black Lives Matter and people of color ally group for Black Lives Matter. And I'm thinking of the way in which his mother showed up for movement. So in the midst of 2020, when so many of us were in the streets, deep in these streets, in Rahul Deep's name, right? Deep in these streets and protesting and organizing, and couldn't come home to do the things that mamas do. I think about the way his mother, who was visiting from India, showed up, and she would come to the weekly protests that we were doing then in front of Jackie Lacey's office, who we were successful in ousting from the DA position. Thank you. And she would show up with Tupperwares full of food. And she would say to me, I know you don't have time to cook for the kids tonight. And I'm saying that to say that Andy transitioned 2 years ago, almost on January 1st. He suicided. And he's been very present for me and the children lately. His spirit has been. But I'm thinking about the way that he showed up, but also his mother showed up. So many people think that being involved in movement, and I know I'm crying, so it's the antithesis of what I'm saying, but they think showing up for movement means constantly being heavy. And it's not, right? Movement is about tears, but it's also about laughter. It's about bringing what you have to movement. So I'm thinking about Mrs. Gill and how she would show up with these Tupperwares full of food. And she loved to cook. And she poured her love into those delicious chickpeas that she would make for us, and basmati rice that she would make for us, and samosas that she would make for us. And she would pour her love into that. And then I would come home and get to pour that love into my children. And so I'm saying that to say that when everybody carries a piece of the work, my grandmothers who I invoked would say what many Black grandmothers say, many hands make light work, right? And so if your calling is to make rice, make rice and bring it to the protest. If you're calling, I'm thinking about KO, who is, freedom singers and a dad jokester, right? And he shows up in this beautiful, hilarious, melodic way every single Wednesday and brings his keyboard and sings for us. If that's your way of showing up for movement, show up for movement in that way. I'm thinking about the way that,
I have this t-shirt from KO. This that you bring it up. I have this t-shirt that I got
from right, right. On Sunday was the funeral of Michael Latt, who was one of our allies who was tragically killed a couple weeks ago. And I'm thinking about Michael and the work he did with Blackout for Justice, Blackout for Human Rights. And I'm thinking also about one of our early members, actually a co-founder and former student of mine, co-founder of Black Lives Matter Los Angeles, Shamel Bell, and the way that she would show up for movement. She hasn't been present in the streets lately, but in the early years, you know, would come and choreograph dances for us. And we would always do dances in the front of, you know, the protest. And I'm saying that to say this last 10 years where Black Lives Matter was birthed, and we pledged to build a movement, not a moment, right? Here in Los Angeles is the birthplace of Black Lives Matter. So Black Lives Matter Los Angeles is the first chapter of Black Lives Matter. It is the birth of the movement that is the largest racial and social justice movement in global history, right? And how we showed up was just regular people saying, you know, maybe if we dance, we can dance and demand Black liberation through those dances. If we just sing, maybe we can demand Black liberation through those songs. I'm an educator, right? And so I hope to facilitate a process where we all learn from those who walked before us, some whose names we know, like Mrs. Fannie Lou Hamer, some whose names we hope that the world will learn, like Baba Kwasi Nkrumah. And we bring all of that to movement. And if we all bring what we have to movement, we can and will change the world. We will make, you know, you talked about Gaza, right? We will make those 23,000 martyrs names and lives mean something. And so that's the work that we're doing. That's the work that I'm pledged to, as one who sees Black Lives Matter as her sacred duty, as the way that my life has gained purpose over the last 10 years. The last 10 years have transformed my life and the lives of my children, the lives of my family, the lives of my comrades. And it's been, this last year especially has been very difficult and heavy, and there is heaviness in movement. But there's also, I think, great purpose in movement, and at times spaces of great joy in movement. We've won some things, right? We've won some tremendous things. We have a building called the Center for Black Power, which sits right at the birthplace of Black Lives Matter, right? We have a fist statue that sits in Africatown, which some people call Lamert Park. We have out of policy rulings in the name of Takar Smith and Keenan Anderson. We have ways that we've been moving forward. We have victories for our young people. I think about the way in which my own children have been affected by moving police out of schools in LAUSD. And so these are great victories and great joys. I think about the way in which they laugh, and their laughter carries through those Black Lives Matter meetings, which we just had on Sunday night, and how we got to celebrate Sunday night Mama Paula, who's one of our movement sages, who's been moving us through the police accountability work. And, you know, we got to love up on her and sing to her and give her roses while she's here. And so all of that has been part of the last 10 years of Black Lives Matter, and being unapologetically Black. I don't want to take credit for what does Shabazz say? Claim no, Amilcar Cabral. We also have a brother, Amilcar Shabazz, but Amilcar Cabral says, claim no easy victories, right? So I don't want to be claiming victories which are not ours, but I do believe Black Lives Matter has played a tremendous role in the way in which Black people have now been able to be unapologetically Black in every space, artistic spaces, educational spaces. And so I think that even the ethnic studies wins, the Black studies wins, the African American history curriculum is part of the victory of Black Lives Matter and part of the work of the last 10 years.
So a lot of our readers are not Black. And when you said being unapologetically Black, I understood what you meant. But I think that there are people who will not understand what that means. Can you expand upon that? What does it mean to be unapologetically Black?
So to be unapologetically Black means what it sounds like, right? To be Black out loud, Black on purpose, right? To not have to make other people feel comfortable with our Blackness, right? That, if you're not comfortable, you got to get comfortable, right? But it's not my job to stroke you into comfort. There was a time, if people just remember 10 years ago, where we were told that we had to be quiet about Blackness, that every time we said Black, we had to couple it with Black and brown or hide it under a people of color umbrella, right? Where we had to say, are you okay with this? Or let you touch my hair, right? I think that unapologetic Blackness is about saying that I will absolutely dance loudly to rap music and jazz and blues, right? That being Black is something that I am entitled to, that your white privilege is not something you're entitled to, right? And I think that the world becomes better when we are unapologetic about who we are and challenge the world to catch up with that.
Yes, yes, that's good. That's good. My experience of Blackness has been somewhat on a continuum. So I'm a little bit older than you, a lot older than you. And I remember when James Brown's song, Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud, when that came out, and when afros were being worn. There has been this gradual process of being more authentically who we are and being comfortable in our skin. And so for me, that's what being unapologetically Black is I am authentically Black. I am born this way. I love being who I am. And I don't feel that someone else's standards that are imposed upon me are standards that I should embrace. I throw those off and fully embrace who I am. And Black Lives Matter has made that increasingly more easy. So thank you.
Thank you. And of course, we grow from that, right? There's no Black Lives Matter didn't come out of nowhere, right? So when you invoke James Brown, right? Say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud, right? It informs a chant that we say, right? I said, I love being Black. I said, I love being Black, right? I love the skin that I'm in, right? All of that is something that we inherit from generations that come before us, right? The Black Power movement informs the anti-apartheid movement, which informs, the hip hop movement, which informs Black Lives Matter, right? And so it's a continuum. And so thank you for everything that you put in, that you pour in, that has been poured in before this iteration of movement was here.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it really, it does give me hope.
Right.
Even though at times, there are times when it's hard to see glimmers of hope when we're going through what we're going through now, with war, and that's all I'll say there. So is there anything else, Melina, because I told you we were going to be on for 15 minutes. Is there anything else that you want to share with the progressive community about yourself or about the Black Lives Matter LA, Black Lives Matter Los Angeles, Black Lives Matter grassroots? You want to talk about Black Lives Matter grassroots as opposed to Black Lives Matter so that we can reinforce this this distinction.
Sure. Black Lives Matter grassroots, clear and simply, is Black Lives Matter. It's what you think of when you think of Black Lives Matter. You think of movement on the ground, boots on the ground. You think of how we were birthed as a resounding cry against institutional racism, against state-sanctioned violence against Black people. That's what Black Lives Matter grassroots is. Over the last couple of years, there have been attempts to appropriate who we are, right? There has been attempts to kind of package and corporatize almost who we are and what we are, and it's felt to many as kind of off because Black Lives Matter is a movement, not a brand, right? And so Black Lives Matter grassroots is that movement. We're a collective of now 33 chapters worldwide. We are, doing work in the names of our loved ones, in the names of people like Takar Smith here in Los Angeles, and Stephen Perkins in Alabama, and Andrew Joseph III in Florida, right? And the thousands of folks who were killed by state-sanctioned violence globally. We are doing as much as we can to inherit the righteous legacy of people like Baba Mutulu Shakur and Rochelle McGee, who we recently laid to rest, our political prisoners. Rochelle McGee asked to be laid to rest in a Black Lives Matter pin, right? The longest serving political prisoner in US history saw inspiration in Black Lives Matter and was buried with a pin on his lapel. Mutulu Shakur, I'm grateful that he became a mentor in person before he transitioned, right? And so we seek to inherit that legacy of radical, visionary Black liberation struggle. And we are a movement, not a moment. We are what we pledged to be. And so we want to make sure that people understand Black Lives Matter grassroots is distinct from other entities which have sought to capitalize and really enrich themselves off of a brand. And we are not a brand, we're a movement. And we will struggle until we're free. And so we encourage—
How will people find you? How do people find Black Lives Matter grassroots?
So we're BLM Grassroots on all social media. We have a website, blmgrassroots.org. All of the chapters around the country fall under the umbrella of Black Lives Matter grassroots. So Black Lives Matter Los Angeles, Long Beach, Black Lives Matter Florida, all of them are under that umbrella. So the work that's moving forward is under the umbrella of Black Lives Matter grassroots, and people can again find us under blmgrassroots.org and BLM Grassroots on all social media. And we encourage people to get involved. So you mentioned allies. We work with White People for Black Lives. There are ally groups. We encourage allies to get involved in our work. If you're in Los Angeles, we still protest every single Wednesday, challenging police associations, which are not unions. We are nothing if we are not consistent and constant. So every single Wednesday at 4 o'clock, we protest in front of those police association headquarters at 1313 West 8th Street. So we need people to join the movement. We need your body. We need you to show up for protest. We need your voice. We need you to share about BLM grassroots. Unfortunately, the massive social media platforms that we built in 2020 were hijacked by those who seek to, again, enrich themselves through our work. And so we're rebuilding. So we need people to follow BLM grassroots on all social media. And then we do need resources. And so there are ways to donate through our website. And we're seeking donations for Black Lives Matter grassroots and all Black radical organizations, especially during this season that we call Black Xmas season. And if people go to blackxmas.org, we have a pretty exhaustive list of Black radical organizations in Los Angeles to support. So we hope that you support Black Lives Matter Los Angeles and Black Lives Matter grassroots. But if your thing is the arts, we want you to support the Fernando Pullum Center right there in Africatown so they can continue to provide free arts programs for Black youth. If your thing is housing, we want you to support the Los Angeles Community Action Network so they can advocate for supportive housing under the Black radical tradition and the work of Brother Pete White and others. And so we want to make sure that we do the work. Again, we need your voice, your body, and your resources. And if you want to know how to plug in, it's at BLM Grassroots on all social media. BLM-LA is who we are locally on X, and BLM Los Angeles on Instagram.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Melina Abdullah, for doing all that you do and for just staying so committed for these past 10 years. The LA Progressive is certainly committed to BLM-LA and BLM Grassroots. So
we're grateful to you for that. Thank you so much for being, we always talk about independent media and Black media as being, there's an African proverb, until the lion tells the story, the hunter will always be the hero. And so you've been a lion, and we're grateful for that.
Thank you. We do try. So yeah, we're going to end this conversation, but we are going to be picking it up again in a couple of months, right? So every few months, we'll check back in with Dr. Melina Abdullah. She always has something interesting to share. Thank you for being with us today, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Sharon. Bye-bye.
Thank you for sticking around. If you like the LA Progressive content and the discussions we have here, please consider clicking the subscribe button below and also give us a thumbs up. That helps to grow our audience by feeding the algorithm, which helps to get this content in front of more eyes. Thanks for stopping by. We really appreciate your support.